Thank God it's Friday. We have some things to discuss. One playoff series closes out, and the coach of the team that was closed out was not too happy with the performance of his team. We'll talk about that in a minute. A couple other series taking turns that were not expected. We'll start off the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So yesterday was the first round of the NFL draft, and as a draft guy, yeah, I get into all drafts. I'll even watch the baseball one a little, even though that's the worst one of all of them, because it's like that's just like it's almost not worth it. But I'll peek in on the baseball. But the NFL draft, I didn't watch live because I just think they take too long sometimes. But I was tracking it.
So drawn out.
Yeah, but I was tracking it, and so the other day I was asked and by a good friend, when the Jets made that trade with Aaron Rodgers, hey, what does it really matter? You just wrote here that it mattered that the Jets swapped two draft positions with Green Bay in the first round. The Jets were going to go 13th. Now they're going 15th. I'm like, it matters. It matters because you may not get the player you need to get. And he's like, I don't know. Seems overrated, whatever. Which would be something Kevin Allen would tell me. So
not in the NFL. I would tell you that in the NHL for sure.
Yeah.
So,
and I would agree with you on the NHL. So yesterday, draft's going around, 13th pick comes up, and all of a sudden, who's in the 14th spot? New England. All of a sudden, New England makes a trade. With who? The Pittsburgh Steelers for a 4th-round pick. And I had a good friend tell me that swap was a 4th-round value, and he was right on the money. He knew that 2 draft positions in that part of the draft was worth 4, and that's Orlando Macchia, a guy I do a Jets rehab show with. So he knew that. So they do the swap. Why did New England do the swap? Because he didn't need an offensive lineman, but they knew the Jets did. And Belichick still hates the Jets, and he took a 4th-round pick so Pittsburgh can go and draft the offensive lineman that the Jets needed. So then what did the Jets do? The Jets draft off the board. They go and get another edge rusher, which they got last year, who hasn't really panned out. I think he had 1 sack. Had a few injuries, but when he was healthy, he wasn't very good. And you look at it and you say, they took a guy that not only was not invited to the draft, but nobody could find anybody's mock draft where they had him in the first round. And that's who the Jets took. So once again, Bill Belichick in a draft had an effect on one of his competitors. And I hate him, but I got to give him credit for it because this is something that the Jets probably never saw coming, and they should have.
Well, Kev, the Detroit Lions were at 6-18 and decided to trade out of 6, get an extra 2nd-round pick, and then shocked everybody by taking a running back at 12.
Yeah, no, I mean, it hasn't played particularly well in Detroit and, of course, nationally. I saw one grading of their draft picks, and they got a C plus for taking Campbell, the linebacker, at 18, and then they got a D or a D plus, I think it was, for taking the running back, and just for the reason you said, not only taking running backs in the first round just is not done anymore, or rarely, or at least you got to wait till the bottom of the first round.
Yeah.
Just because their career expectancy isn't very high, they're constantly getting hurt even when they stay in the league, and they're sort of interchangeable. You got their Lions will have like 3 or 4 running backs that they will use, and he'll just be one of those guys. I mean, you hope you find somebody that, sort of breaks out of the, what is the new tradition for running backs and is a featured back, but it doesn't happen that often. And really, you don't want them to have that kind of workload because you do not want them to get injured, So, yeah, the NFL draft, when I watch that, and I do enjoy that, mostly we enjoy it because we know the players. A lot of us are college fans as well, or at least we pay enough attention. But it just really brings home about how difficult it is to draft in the NHL. I mean, there is an expectation in the NFL that anybody you take for sure in the first 3 rounds, that he's going to step in and play a role on your team. And even, if you don't get like 5 or 6 of your draft picks to play for you in some capacity, either on special teams, then you feel like you failed, because this is immediate help. In 2 years, whether this draft pick has failed or not, or made it. In the NHL, you're just making a decision in some cases whether you're going to sign the guy.
Well, the Jets will know quicker, Kev, because he's 24, so they're going to know quicker.
Well,
go ahead, Mike.
No, the funny thing is that Campbell, who was somebody that the Bills were talking about, but they were saying that they thought he was like a 2nd-round pick, and that when they traded down, he might be in the upper half of the 2nd round, and he went 18. That's to say he's not a good player, but linebackers, I guess, went quicker than a lot of people thought. And the other great need for Buffalo, at least all the pre-draft chatter, was them being interested in a wide receiver. And then all of a sudden and this happens in every draft, from 20 to 24, 4 wide receivers, 20, 21, 22, 23 wide receivers, 4 straight. And at that point, they had to trade up to get a guy who they liked as a tight end, who's basically not a tight end. He's sort of a like a pass catching tight end, basically a big wide receiver, which I'm skeptical about. The guy's got great hands, but it's we can play, like everybody can be, as a fan, watch these drafts and say, oh my God, I think this is a terrible pick, or I think this is a great pick. I'll just say this: in 2018, I'm at a sports bar eating a thing of wings, and everybody in that bar, when the Bills pick came up and they said Josh, they were hoping it was Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
And it ended up being Josh Allen, and there was like, no, like it was that kind of reaction. And now 5 years later, do you think anybody is saying, oh, I wanted Josh Allen? Of course I did.
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure. Although the Buffalo receiver that they took, I just watched Mel Kiper come on and talk about there had 3 of the panelists who were picking one player that they thought could have a real impact, and he picked that Buffalo
Kincaid.
Yeah. He thinks he's going to be a player that will step in and immediately improve their receiving core.
Well, okay, and Russ knows this, and we all know this about hockey, and we'll start talking about the games last night in a second. But
do we have to?
Yeah. The one thing that we all hate is when they say, well, this guy reminds me of that guy. And yesterday when this Dalton Kincaid was picked, everybody's saying, well, he's just like Travis Kelce, or he's just like George Kittle. No, please. Don't say that to me. It's like, Alexander Daig was the next Gilbert Perreault. No, he's not. Just don't stop the comparison bull crap and just let the guy be what he's going to be.
But you don't. Yeah, see, you and I completely disagree on that as a guy who covers the league. And I mean, you need that. The fan base needs a basis for comparison, because they don't study the draft like Russ Cohen does. So they just need to know what the guy is like. The problem is that some fans take that as being that you're saying
gospel.
As opposed to the way he plays or how he looks. But that's their problem. But for us to just ignore the fact, and not try to explain what this guy is like, you're really doing a disservice. So I disagree with you. I think you have to use comparisons, and if they don't figure it out, that's their problem.
I've acquiesced to the sense where I'll say, this guy has a few traits of this guy, and that's as far as I ever go anymore. That's
but or he skate, he has a skating style that's resembles this.
I won't go any further than that.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to do that, and in order to, you got to promote the game that you cover a little bit as well. So
no, I get that part of it.
I do like that. One quick thing too, because it is related to hockey. I just saw this morning, and I know Russ will appreciate this. They were just discussing, and I didn't get I came in on the tail end of it, so I didn't actually hear the specifics, but there's because stolen bases are so prominent in baseball, this season. There's a new analytical statistic evaluating how catchers perform, and it's a little more sophisticated. I wish I would have seen the whole thing because I'm curious about it now on how they're doing in hurting the running game. So
Right.
instead of just saying, did you get the guy out? It's more sophisticated than that. I don't know what it is. But anyway, it got me thinking.
It's Google. Google got these stats, and it's from 2016 to now.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to take a look at that because I'm curious about it. But anyway, it got me thinking about hockey. And, despite the fact that we now have advanced statistics in hockey, it's really hard in our game to get beyond the idea that we're really a team game. And I say that because, what do you hear all the time from coaches and GMs about even save percentage or, certainly goals against average for a goalie, that's influenced by how the team is playing to such a heavy degree that they almost view it as a team statistic. I mean, there aren't many pure, like a pitcher versus a batter confrontation. That's one-on-one. Like that's real raw data that you can really do something with.
Yeah, like with goalies, you can do breakaway stats. Like they have stats and that's legit. That's
right, that is legit. But other than that, it really is, more difficult. And I'm not saying they're meaningful. They're meaningless because they're not. There's few of them now that I really rely on is to see how a team is playing. I think, quality chances, not just scoring chances, but quality chances within that home plate area in front of the net. I think that's a pretty telling statistic. Yeah. If you're giving up a lot of chances in that area, because the best teams in the league are the teams that give up the fewest in that regard.
Well, here's where I'll go with you on the stat run because I like stats. I did look at the catcher thing yesterday. I agreed that right now in today's baseball, Realmuto is the best guy. But I saw people writing best ever, and I'm like, so I looked up Benito Santiago just as an example, right? Because he used to throw out guys from his knees. He was 1% off from what right now Realmuto is, but of course played a lot more years. Realmuto's only in year 10. And then I looked up a childhood favorite of mine because I remembered that he would get compared to Johnny Bench just defensively, and that was Jerry Grody. I looked him up, and he's 2 percentage points higher, but he played 16 years, so that's 6 more years. He had 2 years where he had 56% and 54% throwing out runners, which is incredible. So, you got to know that.
Let's start the show. The natives are getting restless. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, April 28th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the series that ended yesterday, and we'll work our way east. The Vegas Golden Knights beat the Winnipeg Jets 4-1, eliminating the Jets in 5 games. I don't think many people picked the Jets for an upset here, but it's still, I guess, the way the Jets. I mean, this was a war of attrition. They lost Scheifele, they lost Morrissey. They had some good performances, but I think they were dead after the double overtime loss. Rick Bowness came out after the game, talked for less than a minute, said he was disgusted with the effort of the team, basically called out the core group of the team. Obviously, there were going to be some changes in the offseason, but Kev, I was a little surprised. I heard about this morning when I woke up. I didn't hear it when I was coming back from Toronto last night. But I'm a little surprised a veteran coach like Bowness would go down that road unless he thought changes were coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that he was sending a message to management because I agree with you. I couldn't come up with an example. I've asked around the league. The only one people pointed out that Scotty Bowman did criticize his team when it got lost to New Jersey in '94, but as everyone pointed out, wasn't nearly as harsh as this was. I mean, this was a slap. I'm slapping you around. He mentioned pushback 3 times in 3 sentences.
And he said disgusted. The word disgusted.
Disgusted was the word he used as well. And I sense his frustration. He's 68 years old. He came out of retirement to take this job, and he just did not appreciate the lack of effort.
I don't have time for this shit. That's what he.
Yeah, no, that's exactly his attitude about that. And and if you look at it, they won the first game, but they won that first game because Vegas was trying to find its playoff mode. We see that all the time.
Yeah.
That first game is just sort of, I gotta sort of get into the I gotta take a punch a little bit and get into the fight. And then after that, 4 straight losses. They outscored the Winnipeg 18-9. They doubled their thing. I didn't think Winnipeg played a decent game after that first game.
No.
And yeah, they had some injuries as well. But of all the teams, I said this the other day, they're the team that just didn't look like it belonged in this group. Out of the 16 playoff teams, they just looked like, why are we here? We don't deserve to be here.
I think of the playoff teams, of the 16 playoff teams, they had the worst record in February and March. And like I said, they rallied in the final 2 weeks of the regular season to sneak in. And I thought Hellebuyck would win some games for them. He didn't play badly, but Russ, that game, they're down 4-1. They rally to tie at 4-4. They go to double overtime, and then Dylan Sandberg gives up the puck on just an error. It wasn't purposeful, obviously. And after that, I just thought the error was out of the building. I thought they were done.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a couple things. First thing is, I always think it's very hard in this era to be a goalie and stand on your head and steal a series. Players are just too good for that now. Players they're allowed to crash the net again. Goalies are getting pushed around all game long. There's just too much action in the crease for it to be all about the goalie. So I would never say anything about Hellebuyck. But as a viewer, if you watched that game, you knew that game was over at 2-0. Like you just said, this game's like me as a little bit of an older guy valuing sleep. Once it hit 3-0, I'm like, have a nice day, Winnipeg. See you next year. Because, I'm not wasting any more. Like Rick Bonus, I'm not wasting my time on this. I'm just not. But
I got better things to do, like sleep.
Right. I want to say this, though. Tony Soprano's like, fire Chevrolet. I want to tell you something. That job as GM for the Winnipeg Jets is one of the hardest in the league because players don't want to go there. He's got to get players with term all the time, and he's trying to put a team together based on that because generally you don't find players lining up to play there. Be careful because if you do fire Kevin Chevrolet, it's going to be hard to replace him and what he's been able to do that way.
Yeah, Kev, they've got a lot of players, like Blake Wheeler's got a year left. Pierre-Luc Dubois has made it clear, if they go to arbitration with him, he's going to walk in free agency. So they probably end up trading him this summer. They've got Scheifele's got a year left in his deal. Hellebuyck has got a year left. And that's the big one in terms of, you don't sign him, you better move him because you're not, you either get him locked up this July or you better trade him.
Yeah, I just wrote a piece about the lack of goaltenders that are available. Boy, it would change if they decide to trade Hellebuyck in a hurry. And they would get a good return on that. Really, they're going to have to decide. They're going to be in that mode of where do we go from here?
Right.
Because if you're trading Scheifele, and if you're thinking about trading Hellebuyck, you're not completely rebuilding, but there's a real reset here.
Oh yeah.
That's probably coming, and that's not any fun. Ask the teams that have been out of the playoffs for 7 or more years. So.
Yeah, and as for Vegas, they'll be waiting for the result of LA Edmonton, probably hoping it goes to 7 games. I still think, Russ, that you're going to see eventually a change from Brossoit to one of the other goaltenders. But he won 4 straight, so you don't mess with success, I guess.
They're not changing them yet.
No.
By the way, that Edmonton game is on Saturday.
Yeah,
I told you about all those NBA games. It's such a long wait in that series.
Yeah, NBA games. One of them, which is not even being played. They scheduled the Clippers game. The Clippers got eliminated,
right.
But of course, since they could have played the game,
can't go back and tell people, well, you come a day early.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what happens when you have 3 professional teams being booked in one building.
And the NBA always is going to take precedence.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Like that we know that. Like that's a time-honored tradition.
Now,
no, it's a money-honored tradition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Cha-ching. Okay, let's move east to Game 5 at the Rock yesterday, Russ. And my God, so a home team actually won a game in this series.
Look, like 7 points. I could tell you about the Rangers. Like a 60-year fan emailed me this morning and said, "What the hell's wrong with them?" And I gave him like 7 points. Mike saw them because I threw them in our group. I'm not going to go over all 7, but just the quick and easy ones are Panarin obviously has to score. He's had some great opportunities. He hasn't cashed.
By the way, it was the 60-year fan. Was it the big whistle, Bill Chadwick?
No, Bill's been dead for a while now.
Sorry.
The second one is Patrick Kane's not Patrick Kane. Like we all know that now to the degree where he was a problem yesterday. He was, because he had 4 penalty minutes. He was a -1. Like they matched up the line. I said if they did that, it would be a problem for the Rangers first line if they're not scoring. That's a problem. So they did cut his minutes, so at least they did that, but that's a problem. The third problem, which is unforeseen but happens in this game, is so when Shesterkin sees that, and Zibanejad's struggling, but at least he was hitting posts. I mean, sometimes that happens. But when your best goalie, one of the best goalies, sees your team struggling, he then thinks he's got to play to the point where he can only give up 1 goal or he's going to lose. And so he's starting to take chances that he normally wouldn't take and gave up a goal that he shouldn't have given up at one point. So you put all that together, Devils playing well. Rangers can't solve the 1-2-2. Schmidt is just an okay goalie. Like, that's what he is. He's an okay goalie, but the Rangers really do have to kind of get in the crease. And the one change Gallant could make is maybe make and this doesn't have to be your top line, but maybe put like Kreider and Hedl and Trocheck together and put them on a line and let them just crash the net the entire shift, control the puck, and get in his kitchen. They haven't tried anything like that. And, yeah, it would require putting Hedl back on the wing, but that's okay. I'm willing to do that because I kind of have to show the Devils now I made it too easy for you. The Rangers aren't even generating shots like they should. And defensively, look, they've had problems all year. I've never tried to hide that the Rangers' defense isn't great. But even if Joe Morello's saying there's new lines at practice, new line is new line. They tried new lines in that game too. There's a method to what I'm saying, and I don't know if Gallant's thinking the same way, but I'm going to tell you, Gallant could find his luggage on the curb if they lose this series next game, because they were up in the series, and ownership, even though ownership is the one that pushed for Patrick Kane and Tarasenko, but Tarasenko I'm not going to blame him on. I like Tarasenko, and I think he's had an okay series. He's always going to be on and off. But I think Gallant, his job would be in trouble at that point if they lose the kind of if they were to get shut out or go down 4-1 in this next game, his job is in trouble.
Yeah, I think the fan base would call him a cab.
Yeah,
they're really kind of on him on social media.
They are. Like, the only thing is he won't have to wait 30 minutes for a cab. There'll be a cab there in a minute and a half.
Waiting for him, yeah.
And it's right there.
Yeah, because cab drivers are Ranger fans. So, sure.
But Kev, I'm a little surprised at after 2 games where they, I think, hosed the Devils.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised. Now I'll give Kira Schmid. He looked. For what I saw of that game, he played really well and limited. Made the save when he needed to, but he's not a world beater. So I'm a little puzzled.
He's playing well though. I mean, I agree with everything Russ said. Other thing I would say is just a guy that is not talking to Ranger fans. I would say, if there are 7 reasons why the Rangers are losing, 4 of them are about the Devils.
Sure,
the Devils are playing, above, and Schmidt's playing above his head. I mean, there's a reason he's a backup. So I agree with you. He's not a world beater in terms of being a goalie, but he's playing well. He's feeling confident, and you got right now that they're saying in the dressing room, you got to take away his eyes. We got to get in his kitchen. We got to disrupt him. They're saying the things you always say in this situation. But right now, he feels good about his game. And, I just didn't, the Devils, I felt like they needed, because this is what I've been taught through the years from watching hockey, is that they needed some playoff losing before they would know how to win. But they got all the leads they needed in those first 2 games, it looks like, because they really do look like a team that's, been through the playoff wars, even though they haven't, not as this group. And they're playing a pretty confident game. So
I'll be like Mike here, Kev, and say historically, it is hard to clinch at MSG. It is. If you're, no matter who you are, no matter what year it is hard. But listen, the Rangers play like they did last game. The Devils are clinching, so they better play differently.
Yeah. I mean, if everything followed what has gone on in the series, now that the Devils have won at home, the Rangers will win at home, and then it'll be a game 7 where who knows what will happen. But I find it hard to believe that this Rangers team, even though they're sort of hodgepodge and they added a lot of players at the deadline, wouldn't sort of put it together. I'm not taking anything away from the Devils. I mean, the Devils have a lot of talent, a lot of speed. And the funny thing is that arguably one of their best players, the guy that they traded like 8 players for, has not been a factor in this series. Timo Meier had no points through 4 games.
He get in Shesterkin's kitchen and bother him a little bit, took his stick away, and that was a thing for a minute or two. I will say this, though. Kevin quoted Don Waddell on this show, and Don was right. And this is what I was worried about. I was worried about the Rangers upsetting their chemistry and their power play when they made the acquisitions, and it's happened. And because if you look at it, the Rangers were on track to possibly win the division. That once they got Kane, and it didn't happen. They all of a sudden had a reset, and all that happened, and that sort of changed them, and it did change the course of them. Now, it didn't show up early in the series, so it's easy to say, it didn't matter. But it does matter. And I think what's happening with the Rangers here is exactly what Don was worried about with Carolina, Kev.
Yeah, no, that's right. I tell you what, though, I am really surprised that Meier has not had a greater impact.
Yeah, me too. I'm shocked.
I mean, he's a really good player. And
fantastic player.
He just looks like a guy that hasn't been able to bring his game up for the tempo of playoff hockey. And
he looks sort of lost, Kev.
He does look lost. I agree with you. I can't figure that out, because I'm really bullish on him. I think he's a terrific player, but I don't know. He does not look like a terrific player in this series. That's for sure.
No, I mean, look, Vince in the chat room saying arguably the Devils' second or third best forward. No. He's doing a lot of little things, yes. Right. But when you have Timo Meier and you gave up the assets you gave for Timo Meier, he has to score.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Like he one of the reasons they wanted him is he can do all those little things too, and he's a bullish power forward, and like you say, he contributes without being on the score sheet. Yeah, he does, but you're also right when you're saying they didn't bring him in to do the little things.
Right.
They brought him in to do the big things.
Right.
He's the guy who's supposed to do heavy lifting for you, and he hasn't been able to do that, and yet they're still ahead in the series.
Listen, I mean, Morello saying Hughes is a superstar. I mean, none of us have shied away from that. Matter of fact, I'll go so far as to say he's probably the first or second best player in the entire playoffs right now.
Okay, let's shift to the third game that was played last night, which was in Toronto, which I was at, and that was the Leafs Lightning Game 5.
Yeah,
and
I forgot they played.
Yeah, and so did I. So let me just give you one sort of like reflection in terms of just the atmosphere, because we talked about this, Kev, with Ack yesterday, and how I said that there was sort of there was definitely an energy, a buzz in the city yesterday, but it was a nervous buzz. It was not a confident, they're going to finish this out. Of course, obviously, since this team hasn't finished off anything in 19 years, it was not confident. It was like, can they do it? And the game began, and Morgan Riley scores, I think 5-6 minutes into the first period, I think it was. And the building, Scotiabank Arena, which is normally one of the quietest buildings in the league, literally, it was it exploded. It was the loudest I think I've ever heard it. And this is the proof of Tampa Bay. And not only the fact that Toronto throughout the year, I wish I could find, there's got to be a website out there that calculates how many times Toronto has given up a goal within 2 minutes of them scoring. There's got to be one of these websites out there, but it's been easily 24. But they scored that goal, and the emotions are rolling, and everybody's like, oh my God, they're going to do it. And 23 seconds later, Anthony Cirelli ties up the game. And at that point, that building was quiet as a church mouse, and everybody knew, here we go. And then playoff Vasilevsky, Kev, showed up, and once the Leafs fell behind 2-1 in the second period, not to say it was over with, not to say they stopped playing, but that feeling of dread that this team has trouble finishing it off, and they did. And then the Leaf killer Nick Paul scores in the third period, and the Leafs brought it to within a goal. But now this series is going back to Tampa and for Game 6. And in my mind, Tampa's got them exactly where they want them.
Yeah. If I had a player who had your attitude about that, I'd bench him for that Game 6. Well, I mean, my take on that, and it really hasn't changed. You know, we talked about Winnipeg and how terrible they were, and they won one game. Right. Tampa Bay is much better than Winnipeg, and now they've won 2 games. But they're still behind in the series. Toronto's still the better team. That doesn't mean that the Tampa Bay Lightning are not dangerous. They are dangerous. They know, like I said, they have a PhD in knowing how to win in the postseason. They can do that.
Right.
So you can't say they couldn't come back and win this series. However, I still think, you'd rather be where Toronto is. I think Toronto has all the ingredients to win it. And, you just got to hope they play through it. But, Vasilevsky can be an X factor. Like, I didn't think Tampa was great in that game. I thought Vasilevsky was really good in that game. So, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's certainly possible that Tampa could come back, but I don't believe they will. There's not been any indication this season that they're the same team they've been in the past, but they do know how to win.
Kevin's right in the fact that Tampa wasn't dominant in the game, but at 1-1, Vasilevsky kept them in the game. Yeah. Then Esamwat scores to make it 2-1. And then Vasilevsky makes a bunch of saves early in the third period. And like I said, that feeling maybe the players are confident that they don't reflect the same emotions as fans do. All I know is that, and I won't say what he said as he walked into the media scrum after the game, but Mitch Marner, in anticipation of being questioned by the reporters, uttered an expletive under his voice, like I have to go through this again. Well, yeah, you have to go through it again because your team and you and that team didn't perform. Yeah. Lost. I mean, if you want to be patted on the back and celebrated as a great player, then you've got to, again, I use the expression, step on Tampa's neck and kill them. And Russ, they let that team off the mat.
Yeah, I mean, all right. Did they let them off the mat? I don't know if they were really ever on the mat.
Okay.
That's the problem. They were never on the mat. They never felt like they were on the mat in that game. Matter of fact, there were times in that game where you knew they were riding the emotion. You knew yourself there was a problem when the Leafs scored first and they scored 3 seconds later. Like, you knew that.
Right.
They know that too, and they felt that too, right? And so my thing was, the biggest test for me was when they pulled the goalie with 4 minutes to go. I would say within 30 seconds of that, Tampa almost scored, but they had 3 Leafs kind of gang up on Killorn, and he couldn't get the puck in the net. Right. At that point, I knew the Leafs were choking in this game mentally. I knew. They came back and they scored 1 goal, but I knew that they were this close to losing the game already because for whatever reason in their minds, they couldn't get up for that last little bit the same way Tampa can.
But at that point, Russ, okay, it was 4.5 minutes to go, and Keefe pulls the goaltender. They're down 3-1. Honestly, if Tampa scores to make it 4-1, who cares? It's like you're in a desperate situation.
They made it ridiculously easy for Tampa to score and make it 4-1, and they were able to rebound from that. But that was my problem. Was it was too easy? And again,
almost was, yeah.
Well, it almost was. But John Cooper looks at this game, and at the end of the game, he's like, "Hey guys, listen. You want this game to go 7. You want this game to be like this. I'll see you back here on Monday."
Well, no, let's just say this. Here's an insight to some of the report. A lot of the reporters were not exactly happy that the Leafs didn't finish off this series and they had to get on a plane to go to Tampa for Game 6 on Saturday. I don't think I'm letting anything out.
I mean, that's obvious, but Cooper knows that. Cooper is he is Red Auerbach right now. Red Auerbach used to smile at you, say what you didn't want to hear,
puff the cigar,
push his team, and basically say F you to your face with a smile. And that is exactly what John Cooper is doing because he can. And John Cooper's guys will go to the ends of the earth to defend any ice that they're playing on. They may not be successful the whole time, but just imagine if the Leafs didn't even come back in the other game. It's like, they're not worried. The Tampa Bay Lightning are down in this series, but they're not worried at all.
Well, Russ, the funny thing was, it's like I think it was Ken Campbell, but I can't remember if you asked it to Keefe or if you asked it to Cooper. I think it was to Cooper. He said what I said on the show a couple days. Like now, Tampa Bay has outperformed the Leafs in 4 of the 5 games. The Leafs, the only game that they put a solid effort from beginning to end was the Game 2 7-2 victory. Other than that, it's been spotty where they come back from a late goal in the third period in Game 3, 3 goals in Game 4. I mean, they'll take the victories. Don't get me wrong. I mean, for them to finish off a team like Tampa, they have to put together a solid, not 60-minute effort, but a solid, dominant effort. And I just don't know, like the last 3 games, they haven't done that. Now, Tampa has something to do with that, Kev, because they're a great team. But still, if you're going to beat that team, you got to beat them. And they don't seem to want to beat them or can beat them.
I mean, you're taking the construct of the individual games, but I mean, clearly Toronto has been better than Tampa in these 5 games.
Well,
I mean, they're up. Right. So, I mean, within the framework of the game. But I think one of the things that's lost with Tampa Bay Lightning is, they're not feeling any pressure. No. Like their legacy is assured. Like they've been to the final 3 years in a row. That gives them the luxury to sit around and think about how they can win this series. Like there's no pressure on them. There's no sense of urgency. They can be calculating. They can think about it. They can talk about it. The coaches can sit around and say, what can we do here? And I think that's what's helping them here is, because they know, at least I think they know, they can't sustain it like they have in the past.
Right.
They can rise up in spurts, but, they're dealing with a team that's really talented and, they're not the same team they were. Their depth, as I said, has been eroded.
The same goalie is there, and his record in elimination games is ungodly. It's out of this world.
It's 5-1. I just looked it up this morning.
Yeah, it's out, but the save percentage is out of this world. It's like a
948. I wrote that this morning.
So I mean, you got to admit, go find me another goalie with those numbers.
Actually, the Shesterkin and there's one other goalie that's in the top 3. I'm trying to think now who it was. I wrote it too. It's terrible.
In elimination, I know Lundqvist was great in elimination.
Yeah. No, these were only active goalies I was looking
active.
For.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but I do think that is helping them here because I think that that gives them some opportunity to sort of, strategize and guys aren't feeling like, you've described accurately probably, what the Maple Leaf players are feeling because they sense how the city's feeling and they know what the history is. There's none of that on the other side. They're not thinking, oh man, if we lose this, they're just trying to figure out how to win. They've got the luxury of being able to do all this and play this series without all the anxiety that goes into it because they've already accomplished a lot. I mean, how many playoff games have they played over the last 3 years?
They're playing with house. They're playing with house money.
House money, yep.
As a fan, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I did with the Mets and the Braves. There was nothing the Mets could do to really ever beat the Braves in a series. Even if they were up in a series, I watched, weird things happen in games. I watched a pitcher walk in the losing run in a game because he couldn't get the ball over the plate. All of a sudden, like, he's a really good pitcher, and all of a sudden he couldn't get the ball. Like, I've watched this, and I've watched teams break down mentally, and it's hard to now convince me that that's not what's happening here with the Leafs either. And it has nothing to do with on the ice. The Leafs are a great team, but they do get to a point where you could see the worry. And look, Morgan Riley talked about it post-game. Like, they are starting to talk about it because it's like they're really fed up with it.
Right.
And I don't know if they're fed up with it to the point that they could overcome it this series.
I think they're okay. Russ, I think they're fed up with it because obviously it's the only thing on the minds of the fan base and of the media. And until they get past it, it's like they keep the questions that are being asked are the same questions that have been asked since 2018. With this particular group. And I just saw something on Reddit that's pretty interesting. And just, to go along with sort of the gambling thing, if a gambler had bet $100 on every closeout game with the Leafs from 2013 Game 7 against Boston, the $100 each game, that person would have won $345,928. And that's a statement of the failure of this team in closeout games. Now, we know it's not the same team, but we're talking about 2018 has been the same core. And that's the thing. It's like, now, yesterday Riley and Matthews scored, but the failure yesterday was, and I told you this, Russ, Mike Stevens of the Hockey News asked this question. I didn't know what the percentage was. But when a team continues to play a player that has been on the ice for 73% of Tampa Bay's goals, and that's Justin Hall, the guy I've been basically saying has been the worst defenseman on that team all year, and they keep putting him out, something is not kosher in Denmark.
No, look, I mean, we know coaches have blind spots. We also, when we talk about that statement, don't talk about what's the stat for the other night, for the next guy. And you're going to say Liljegren, but he's not proven in the playoffs. So we're going to say, what's the stat for the other guy that you're putting in for that? And maybe that's what they've looked at and said, yeah, we realize Hall's not ideal here, but it's worse off for us. And this is why. They might have a report for you, Mike.
Yeah.
Although,
what has the other guy proven? The other guy has proven that he sucks in the playoffs. That's what he's proven.
Well,
that's the thing.
73% is such a high number. I mean, the argument would simply be you can't do any worse than that.
No, I get it. I would take him out too. But I'm just saying there must be something other than favoritism here at work. But whatever.
Well, no, a reporter told me that Justin Hall's analytical numbers, he didn't specify which ones, his possession numbers or this or that or whatever. He was like top 5, top 6 in the league, and I'm like, there is your proof that statistics lie. Because if that's
what they're holding on to for whatever reason.
Yeah. The new phrase is the underlying numbers.
The underlying, yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But how is the series, like, again, so you look at the series and you say, it really doesn't matter about who's the more talented team anymore. It doesn't. I don't think talent's going to win out in this series. I think now it's gotten to the point is who could overcome the obstacles ahead of them in this series. And Kev, sometimes that's what sport's about. Like, sometimes you have to be able to be like Rudy and do what you don't think anybody can do.
It's a battle of will, Kev. That's what it is.
Yeah, no, it is. But sometimes, like when the Edmonton Oilers were running amok, it wasn't anything you were going to do.
Right.
They were scoring 400 goals. And sometimes we see those situations. There are teams that are playing with so much confidence. But I mean, you're right. I mean, I've talked about this for many years, that when I write my book on my sports writing career, there's going to be an entire chapter invested to what nobody talks about is that luck plays such an incredible role in sports. It's you drop a punt at the wrong time in football, a shortstop that's
Leon Lett play in the Super Bowl. Like, that's a perfect example.
right. Yeah. Or a shortstop who's normally flawless, makes an error.
Yeah.
A ball rolls through Bill Buckner.
Yeah.
Yeah. You never, those kind of things you just can't account for. You don't know why they have.
That's one thing I noticed in yesterday's game, though, Kev. I'm sure you noticed it. They covered the middle of the ice really well, the whole team. They know they don't have the greatest defense in the world, but they know if they clog up the middle and Riley doesn't have a path to give a stretch pass to Marner and Matthews,
right.
It hurts the Leafs. And it hurt the Leafs.
And that's why a guy like Liljegren being inserted, who's a more mobile defenseman than Hall, is a better puck carrier up the ice. If they're clogging up the middle, then the defensemen have to skate it out. And right now, all you have is Riley and, Brody's okay, but they're not breakout defenders. So I would assume Michael Bunting is going to be in the lineup for Game 6. I haven't seen the reports of the lines at practice, but I think there are going to be some changes, and I would hope that Hall would be out of the lineup. Keefe said that there would be some lineup changes based on injury.
As an example, though, so even if they bring Bunting in, they are going to attack Bunting, and they're going to try and get him to
And I'm sure he's prepared for that, Russ. I mean,
everybody says they are, but when Corey Perry does it, everybody seems to fall victim.
Well, when Patrick Maroon runs Giordano into the boards and gets a 2-minute minor for roughing instead of a 5-minute major, they didn't even do the 5-minute boarding thing, Kev, where they could video review it. They just called a 2-minute. Giordano was struggling to get to the locker room. They just handed out the 2-minute roughing minor.
They're reluctant to give those majors in a playoff game.
Yeah, that's what I told Mike. They are.
Well, I know, but what they see. The practice seems to have been in this playoff. If there's any question, call the 5-minute boarding major, video review it with the video, and then make the determination.
They were confident it wasn't a major.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I mean, for that same argument, I thought Jake McCabe's hit on Braden Point was high, and his stick was pretty close to getting him in the face, and there was no call on that. And Braden Point got wiped out on that play.
Yeah.
All right, 4 games tonight. Obviously, all of them 3-2. Just quickly, Islanders, Hurricanes. Rod Brindamore is basically telling the media, you'll find out who the starting goalie is when he skates on the ice at the beginning of the game. So the gamesmanship has begun, Kev.
Yeah, and I know Russ wouldn't go with Anderson, so we can.
I wouldn't, but that's who I think is going to be in there.
Yeah, that's who I do too. I think it's Freddie Anderson.
Yeah,
but it's just a guess. I mean,
I'm not sure Ronta's done anything wrong. I think they're just.
He hasn't.
No,
he hasn't. It's just like when you pull the goalie out just to get your team thinking differently. So, but I mean, like the Islanders. I thought they had a chance to win this series, and I still do, but it doesn't mean they're the better team. That's for sure.
No, when Kyle Palmieri is your leading point getter in a playoff series, that sort of illustrates the issue that I've had with the Islanders, which is that they don't have enough scoring. But Sorokin is a really good goalie.
Listen, last game was their best game. They were really good in that game, and Carolina has to bring back their game too. So listen, the Islanders weren't going to roll over.
No,
we all know that.
No, I didn't. No. Nobody expected that to. Now, I think people did expect the Bruins to beat the Panthers, but now it's Game 6 going back to Sunrise. Krejci made the trip. Like I said, I think you say if he made the trip, he's going to play. Do they? Okay, we'll just ask. Do you think that the Panthers are going to be going back to Boston for Game 7, or do you think it ends tonight?
No, I think it ends tonight. I will tell you this, though. We said that Bob had to step up last game. He stepped up. He stopped that breakaway. Marchand kind of knew when he didn't bury that breakaway that they were in trouble in that game. Like, you could see the look on his face like, man, how did I not score on that? Right. And so, and that would have ended the game. Like, that would have ended the series. And so I give Bob credit. Like, he came up big, but I don't know if he's going to do it again. I think Boston will just be too much.
I predicted Boston 6, so it's right on target for me, Kev. But I mean, I have to give Florida credit. I mean, I thought Boston was going to roll over them, even though I predicted 6. But they've been tougher than I think many people have expected.
Yeah, and then nobody can lose their top 2 centers and think it won't have an effect. Even if you're a deep team, and Boston is a deep team, you can't not be if you win 65 games. But when you take Bergeron out of the lineup and Krejci, it forces everybody to play in a different role than he did before. So, and then Bergeron, clearly has a little bit of rust on his game, and he's trying to just get back to where he is. So I would think they'll get it done tonight, but who knows? I mean, Tkachuk has been waving that flag and getting his team fired up, and
he's done a good job of it. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
And the 2 late games, Minnesota hosting Dallas, the Kraken hosting Colorado. Which series has a better chance of going to a game 7?
I think the Minnesota series, because I'm worried now with this Nichushkin situation. It looks really bad. I don't expect him to be back for the rest of the playoffs the way this is looking, and it's affecting the team. Like when you see as a police report with the team trainer, this is affecting the team. So I'm going to say Seattle has the best chance of ending it.
Yeah, and I mean that's just stuff you just do not want to see during a playoff if you're a team. I mean, because it does impact the team because they're all buddies with him, and now all of a sudden
it's a distraction.
And he's gotten himself, in a mess here, and the fact he had to take personal time away to deal with it. So it's a real messy situation. But Minnesota certainly could mount a charge here. Minnesota's a very good team, so we're going to see how that is. I still think Dallas is better, but we'll see.
Too, but man, Minnesota's doing a good job. They are, like you said.
Yeah, I think it could go 7 with Dallas and Minnesota. I still think Dallas is going to win the series. I'm just stunned that Seattle was in a position to win, to close out this series. It's still shocking to me. So, all right, great show, guys. We'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.